Take a look at the Week 8 waiver wire targets. Florio, take us through your list here.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, who was playing well before his bye, don't forget, and was dropped because he had the bye week, so don't forget about him. Tua Tagovailoa has just been playing well since returning from the IR. Daniel Jones looked better yesterday, gets a great matchup next week against the Chiefs. Mac Jones, we talked about, like him, his schedule down the road a little bit. Kenneth Gainwell, someone that is going to be in a hot target on the waiver wire this week. Brandon Bolden is the new James White. Kenyon Drake, even though he's on bye next week, Josh Jacobs left early and Drake was more utilized. Boston Scott there with Miles Sanders hurt as well. And then some deeper league options in Samaje Perine and Ty Johnson at the running back position. Moving to some receivers, Rashad Bateman, he was my top ad last week. I know he's on bye next week, but get this guy on your roster. Darius Slayton is still in play if the Giants are banged up in a good matchup next week. Khalif Raymond is just outperforming people's expectations. Russell Gage, Elijah Moore, Alan Lazard, Nico Collins. Those are a little bit deeper options if you're in need of a receiver. And then Evan Ingram, Ricky Seals-Jones, and someone we just talked about, CJ Uzomah, rounding out the tight end list. Because who doesn't need tight ends? Even on National Tight End Day, Marcus, we're always in need of streaming tight ends.
I mean, it was National Tight End Day, and like Robert Tonyan had a good game, so that sort of spoke to kind of how that worked out there. By the way, you had Khalif Raymond on that list, and as somebody who has been a big stand for Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was super frustrating. I mean, one, if you're St. Brown, you get to come back and kind of play in your hometown, right, in front of your friends and family, and it's on your birthday, and you get 0 targets. Like, that's hurtful.
It's just wrong. It's just wrong, you know? Like I checked yesterday to make sure he was still playing.
Right.
And they didn't throw him the ball.
Didn't throw him the ball on his birthday in his hometown. Like, that's the worst. But let's talk about some of the guys who were actually playing better. Ricky Seals-Jones, first and foremost, who really has stepped in, I think, very nicely since Logan Thomas went on injured reserve. As long as Thomas isn't there, would you put him among the ranks of tight end ones this year?
I think you have to. Like, RSJ has played all but one snap in the last 3 weeks, 100% of the snaps the last 2. He saw 7 targets again this week. And in those 3 games, he scored 9, 16, and 11 fantasy points. Like, that is a safe floor and a pretty good upside for a tight end that you can potentially grab off the waiver wire and get into your starting lineups. The 3 weeks since Thomas has been put on the IR have passed, so he is eligible to return now. You got to keep an eye on that. But if Thomas is out, I think Seals-Jones is a low-end tight end one that you could get in your starting lineup each week.
You talk about the floor, and that's sort of what you're playing for with tight ends off the waiver wire. You just want that consistency. And again, for me, until Washington figures out who their second wide receiver is, because Curtis Samuel continues to battle injury, and De'Ami Brown, I think, is hurt now. He may miss some time as well. I just still see the target opportunity being there for RSJ, and so it's hard to keep him out of the lineup, especially if you are streaming tight ends or just looking for help at the position. Kenyon Drake on that list as well. As you mentioned, he has a bye in week 8. But Josh Jacobs suffered an injury. We'll see how serious that is. Obviously, the Raiders get some time to sort of work that out. But the last couple of weeks, Kenyon Drake has felt like a bigger part of the Raider offense, which is what we thought coming into the year. So is he back to having standalone value? Or are we too early to kind of determine that right now?
He's trending in that direction, which is why I think he should be added despite having the bye next week. It gives Josh Jacobs more time to recover, so I'm not anticipating that Drake will be the week 9 starter. That is still a possibility. It could be a severe injury for Josh Jacobs, but even if it's not, Kenyon Drake had 6 touches and 2 touchdowns last week, and then early in the game before Josh Jacobs went out, something that I was keeping an eye on was like they were splitting reps. Like the first 6 running back carries, it was 3 and 3 for each of them. So since the coaching change in Vegas, it does look like Drake is more utilized. It looks like he is the backup running back again, which didn't make sense early on. I mean, they gave this guy a lot of money in the offseason, Marcus. It makes sense that they will utilize him. I would be grabbing him because think you could get him for kind of cheap with him having the bye next week and just keeping him on my bench and seeing what the usage looks like moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a move if you are, if you have a lower waiver priority or if your team is already pretty good and you're just sort of looking for some depth. I think that's the move you make. If you need help right away, obviously Kenyon Drake is not going to be the guy that you want. But it's been nice to see him actually be part of the offense after it just seemed like he was kind of invisible for the last few weeks before that. By the way, Josh Jacobs suffered a chest injury. It does not appear to be serious, but again, we'll have a week or so to kind of figure out how bad it is and what this means for him heading into week 9. Top waiver target in week 8, though, this sort of seems like a no-brainer. I think you and I are of the same mind about who it should be.
Yeah, to me it is Kenneth Gainwell. He scored 14 fantasy points yesterday in Miles Sanders' absence. I know we have to wait on official word for Miles Sanders, but he was carted off, and he looked like he knew it was a kind of serious injury. And what I love is Gainwell saw 8 targets yesterday, and that shows that he will clearly be a big part of the Eagles' passing attack, especially because the Eagles are the king of falling behind in the first 3 quarters and then trying to make a massive comeback in the fourth, which leads to a lot of passing. It's going to lead to a lot of short dump-offs for Kenneth Gainwell. But in this backfield, I also think Boston Scott should be rostered. He played a third of the snaps yesterday. He actually had more carries than Kenneth Gainwell. He had 2 targets himself, and he saw 3 touches inside the 10-yard line to Gainwell's 1. So I think he is the more traditional runner there. I think Gainwell is the upside player. He is the top target, but I don't think Boston Scott is far behind him. He'd probably be my number 2 target on the week at the running back position.
Yeah, I had said on NFL Fantasy Game Day on Sunday morning, we did a segment on players to break up with, and I was breaking up with Kenneth Gainwell because the previous few weeks had been really bleak, where he wasn't really on the field, he wasn't getting opportunities. And it's amazing how things can change in the blink of an eye. Miles Sanders gets hurt, and suddenly, seeing if I still got Kenny G's number. Like, hey, maybe we can work things out. Maybe he's going to be okay. Also, you mentioned Boston Scott. I was looking to see when they play the Giants because he's a notorious Giants killer. It's still a few weeks away. There's still, I would suspect. I think it's 4 or 5 weeks away. It's week 12, so it's still a ways away. So I would suspect Miles Sanders may be back by that. So we don't get the Boston Scott versus the New York Giants game. That's frustrating. Whatever.